We'll keep on bagging her.
Yep.
CPR.
Fox 8 I-Team cameras are on the front lines as first responders fight to save people addicted to heroin
Keep her low so I can do CPR.
every single day. It is an effort that increasingly takes its toll on the responders. Just ask Mike Bridge.
And you see a lot of the stuff that happens, and sorry, I'm a little. It's tough to fight some of the same battles over and over again.
Over several days, the I-Team was embedded with life care in Elyria.
Where's she, upstairs again?
Yes, in the hallway.
As paramedics constantly struggle to save addicts, often administering Narcan, the antidote drug, trying to reverse overdoses.
Safety forces are experiencing Narcan fatigue.
Judge David Mattia, who every week presides over an often packed drug court,
Wow, full house today.
says people like those here in his court trying to get clean and thereby stay out of jail, and the first responders who have saved some of them, have a huge hurdle living here in Northeast Ohio. So what is it about Cleveland?
It's a buprenorphine desert.
And what is the drug buprenorphine? Judge Mattia says it is
The scientific gold standard for recovery. We are operating without one of the tools that has been proven by science to help someone the most.
This chart compiled by the I-Team backs up Judge Mattia's assertion. It shows that as of July, only 109 doctors of the more than 7,000 licensed in Cuyahoga County, that's about 1.5%, have the special government waiver that's needed to prescribe buprenorphine. Surrounding counties have fewer doctors, and so, as you'd suspect, even fewer who can help opioid addicts by writing a buprenorphine prescription.
How many people are opioid dependent here?
Back in drug court, Alex Celarowski raises his hand. At 21, Alex is here because of paramedics, who almost certainly saved his life last November with 5 shots of Narcan. He is now on buprenorphine, essentially a low-dose opiate that helps wean him off other opiates, including heroin.
Does it take away the desire to go use an opiate?
Yes,
And how important is that in your life?
extremely important. It's utmost.
It's not we're giving you heroin for heroin. We're giving something that allows you to be a parent, be an employee, ride the bus, maybe even drive the bus if you're a bus driver. You can function that well on medication-assisted treatment.
You've been involved in this for like 10 months now? Almost dead a year ago, Alex is now planning to enroll in a Tri-C engineering program and hopes to one day be allowed to enlist in the Air Force.
And how much did the medically assisted treatment help you?
I mean, it was key to any success that I've had.
4 corner it. Go.
And in the battle against addiction and against death, the key is to do more of what's been proven to work. Bill Scheel, Fox 8 I-Team. However, you look at the big picture, that more Americans will die from heroin or opiate abuse this year than died in the Vietnam War, or that every 3 weeks, roughly the same number of Americans now die from heroin or opiate abuse who died on 9/11. However you look at it, life and death decisions are being made every day, one person at a time.
Thank God I have family, but I know a lot of people who don't.
32-year-old Krista Sirois of Maslin is alive to play with her 4-year-old daughter, Journey,
What else do you like playing with?
My Barbies.
Your Barbies?
because her family kept her strong, kept her off of heroin during the several days when she was trying to break her dependency but couldn't find any help. Krista says she called 15 treatment centers looking for an empty bed. All were full. Many said not to try back in days, but in weeks.
Can't go there. I don't have 2 weeks. I just don't have 2 weeks, you know? I can't wait.
Because if you do,
I'm gonna die.
Opioid dependency, it's a disease of craving in part. First of all, you get terribly sick, so your brain is screaming, use, use, use. Safety of a sober house.
Drug court judge David Mattia was one of the first to see the opiate and heroin crisis coming almost 7 years ago, driven in large part by the overprescribing of opiates by doctors and dentists. One major problem, detox and rehab centers have to stay small if they want to get federal money to help people who otherwise can't afford treatment.
Medicaid or Medicare will not pay you if your institution has more than 16 beds available for those suffering from mental illness and or substance abuse.
That 16-bed limit is a primary reason why Krista and thousands of others can't find help when they need it. The treatment centers are small, so they are almost always full.
When you use heroin, you can't wait a couple hours. You can't, when you need help, you have to literally be able to walk in. You know, you need to be able to go somewhere right then and there, you know.
And what's the danger if you can't walk right in?
You're gonna go use, you have to, or else you're sick, you know. You're gonna get a bad batch and you're gonna die.
The government's 16-bed limit was put in place decades ago, when the worry was that larger facilities would become, in effect, warehouses or even prisons for disabled people who should be in the community. At the time, no one foresaw a huge heroin epidemic where addicts would be left pleading at the doors of rehab centers that are already full.
They want help right now. They may not want it tomorrow. You know, they tell you to come back tomorrow. That person may not be alive tomorrow.
Kathy Farrell is a nurse. She knows Krista, and she has driven another friend from rehab center to rehab center, desperately looking for an empty bed they never found.
You're sitting there watching somebody withdraw and go through all of the throwing up and being in pain and not being able to eat and literally crying because they want to get help.
Now, a presidential commission has recommended sweeping changes. Their first specific proposal waived the 16-bed limit nationwide to allow more people to get treatment more quickly. Another key recommendation, pay for and encourage more MAT, medicated-assisted treatment. But to prescribe some of the medicines that help with heroin withdrawal, doctors need a special waiver.
There are thousands of doctors in Cuyahoga County.
And less than 100 have this waiver.
Correct. It's extremely difficult for someone who wants to start recovering to find a doctor who will prescribe them medication-assisted treatment. Extremely difficult.
The people who don't have family, that can't find places to go, those are the people who give up. Those are the people that just keep dying.
Do you know people now who would like help who can't get it?
Yes.
How many?
I can think of 6 or 7 off the top of my head.
Krista is on medicated-assisted treatment, gets regular counseling, and after having been addicted for 2 years, she's now been clean and sober for 4 months.
I feel wonderful. I have my life back.
There is hope.
I feel great. You know, it's amazing.
But mostly for those lucky enough to get help. Bill Scheel, Fox 8 News.
We'll keep on bagging her. Yep. CPR.
No place has suffered from the heroin opiate epidemic more than Ohio. 5 years ago, you could sense the crisis exploding when we spoke with people such as Randy Carr.
I relapsed while I was pregnant with her, and I used until 3 weeks ago.
Our state has the highest addiction rates in the nation, and it takes its toll on the addicts who often die and on the first responders trying to save them.
Busy, and you see a lot of the stuff that happens, and sorry, I'm a little.
It's okay.
It's tough to fight some of the same battles over and over again.
But finally, maybe a little light, a little hope, starting at the VA in Cleveland. As doctors here have gained experience with opiates, they have learned a lot about how to try and deal with the pain their patients experience without resorting to opiates as often.
We're talking about rehabilitation, physical rehabilitation, water-based rehabilitation. We're talking about even medication which are not opioids.
In some complex cases, they're even talking about performing certain surgeries to deal with pain.
All of these things allow us to steer away from opioids in the majority of the time.
And that has now put a national spotlight on the Cleveland VA. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and members of his White House opioid task force came to see firsthand. After all, in a state with the highest addiction rates, the Cleveland VA has the lowest addiction rates among any VA in the nation.
The model here is extraordinary, both in terms of its breadth and its effectiveness.
In its own way, the VA in Cleveland has put together the pieces of a puzzle in an 8-step program it calls Stop Pain. It involves a change in medical culture. From the start, they try and treat pain with few, if any, opiates. And the program also incorporates different ideas that we've seen used in different places in Cleveland
4 years.
I think the docs have a big responsibility in this.
Just about 5 years ago, university hospitals saw the need to put guidelines in place to try and limit opiate prescribing as the epidemic was beginning to explode.
We want patients' pain to be well controlled. We don't want our patients out there suffering pain. On the other hand, we don't want to get them hooked, if you will. So that's why we think our guidelines are at least a starting point.
In addition, the Cleveland Clinic's rehab hospital has used a mix of physical therapy coupled with counseling and non-opiate drugs, often to great success, with patients such as Alex Ford. A few years back, we spoke to his mom, Gail Bernstein.
I don't use the word miracle very often, as I've said to Dr. Benez, but for us this feels like a miracle.
And Cuyahoga County Drug Court Judge David Mattia has insisted addiction, often caused by legal prescriptions, needs to be treated like the disease that it is.
Destigmatize it. If you become dependent upon something, we shouldn't treat you as a leper.
What Mattia has been saying for years sounds a lot like what a senior advisor to President Trump, Kellyanne Conway, said last week after touring the Cleveland VA with Governor Christie's team.
One of my personal goals in working with the president on this particular issue is to help destigmatize opioid addiction, because people need to feel free to come forward and admit that they have a problem.
Another member of Christie's White House panel also toured the Cleveland VA, former Congressman Patrick Kennedy.
I'm privileged to be in recovery.
Kennedy says the nation also must treat addiction and have it covered by insurance as it does other diseases.
This is a relapsing chronic illness. We want continuity of care. We want the same reimbursement. We want the same urgency of care that you would provide for any other disease that someone could be afflicted with. End of story.
Is everything still reading on there, on the monitor?
The story is sadly far from over.
Families across this country are desperate. And you all provide the very real possibility of the most powerful drug of all. And that's hope.
Hope that fewer will die and even fewer will become addicted as the medical community changes how it deals with pain, based in part on what's been learned here in Cleveland.